Hello, welcome to an English Sparkling with Tweedy video. I'm in the beautiful South Downs for the evening. I'm out doing a Tweedy Outdoors tradition where I come and have dinner and wine on the South Downs, taking advantage of the fact that the light is, oh my wine's just fallen over, it's light until late. Now in a slightly confusing move, you would think I would come to the South Downs and drink something from the South Downs. I do love the local wine. Over there is Everflight and Ridgeview is somewhere over there, and there's Black Dog Hill. Fantastic wines, a literal stone's throw away from here, as I've said on previous visits to the South Down. But I just happened to have bought a case from Langham, so I've decided I'm going to have one of those this evening. I'm in the South Downs. I know this seems a little bit incongruous, but I do happen to be drinking some wine from Dorset. I was looking at the WineGB Awards recently, and Langham seemed to have swept the board. A lot of the top scoring wines from the 2025 WineGB Awards were given to wines from Langham. This is a Pinot Noir from 2019, so it's a Blanc de Noirs. It's entirely Pinot Noir. It is a little bit pricey, really quite pricey actually. I'll put that on screen. It is not the most expensive wine that Langham currently sell. I also got a bottle of that in that mixed case. I'll be trying that sometime soon. But I yesterday had their modestly priced Pinot dominant wine and thought that was excellent. So if this ends up a bit of a disappointment, then I would recommend go for the Culver, I think it was called. That's their blend that is mostly Pinot Noir, or mostly Pinot I should say, Pinot Meunier and Pinot Noir. Anyway, I'm going to shut up and open this because I would like to be enjoying some wine in this wonderful setting. The chilling setup has been a bit improvised. I brought one of these ice jackets for most of the journey, and I now have a sort of bag filled with ice cubes. It's not great, I know, but down at the bottom it actually feels reasonably well chilled. Perhaps not so great up at the top, but oh well. I may have to do a later appraisal on a subsequent glass because I've got a feeling the first one is potentially going to be a tiny bit too warm. I'm suffering with subpar stemware as well. None of this really ideal. So as noted, terrible stemware. When I had the Culver the other day, I was using nice stemware at home, so this was all a lot more pleasant. This is plastic, I'm outdoors and in a public space and all that. All too easy to break glass. So that is, again, a bit like the Culver, a sort of deepish gold colour. Lovely stream of bubbles there. Very fine looking bubbles. And I think I'm getting a nose that is reminiscent of that Culver, actually, to begin with. We're definitely talking that Pinot-esque stone fruit character. Maybe little hints of things like marmalade, which is something I would more associate with Meunier rather than Pinot Noir. Slight orangey sort of citrus notes. There is, I think I noticed something similar in the Culver, a sort of honeyish but also bready kind of, hot buttered toast with honey on. Yeah, something like toast with honey on. That's some facet of the autolytic character, plus a nice expression again of that Pinot fruit. I think there's some honeyed edges to that. They tend to be really quite low dosage, if I recall correctly. No dosage, in fact. This is an extra brut, disgorged June 2023, so disgorged 2 years ago. It's been on the cork aging since then. But yes, no dosage. Interesting. And there's a mention of oak barrels there as well. This is going to be really dry, but I'm still getting this lovely sort of honeyed note on the nose, which is purely from the fruit. Well, first of all, I actually think I've got the temperature down to an okay level, surprisingly, given this terrible chilling setup. That did not feel too warm. That's a great start. And it's got this lovely, juicy, fruity, I think peaches sort of character to it. There might be a bit of plum in there. There might even be a hint of something like cherry, but it's all stone fruit. I think that fruit character on the palate. But I think the central thing there is, to me, probably peaches, and really juicy and really fresh and really full of fruit. I don't think I would notice if you hadn't told me that this is zero dosage. It is dry, but it's certainly not bone dry and fruitless. Sometimes when Traditional method sparkling wines have zero dosage. They end up very, very dry, and the fruit expression suffers as a result. You can't really taste the fruit because we're used to most fruit being accompanied with some amount of sugar. Whereas that's got this lovely, luscious, juicy, peachy fruit character to it. I like the mouthfeel of that. Got a nice long lingering finish. There is maybe something slightly citrusy, but then, you know, peaches can have a slightly kind of tart quality. Maybe I'm just tasting that sort of stone fruit expression. There could also be a bit of red apple in there, maybe. It's lovely and pure, and I like that they've just stuck to one fruit, they've just stuck to one grape. It's all Pinot Noir. It seems like this is a very minimal kind of messing about style of wine. There's no dosage, everything kept very simple. And it has beautifully expressed that Pinot character. Comparing this to the Culver, I'm not sure this is noticeably significantly better, which is not even really a criticism other than the differential in price. I thought the Culver was very, very good yesterday, and it's a slightly unfair comparison because that I was drinking in proper stemware, and it was definitely chilled perfectly. It came out of the fridge after a long time in the fridge. I think this is chilled okay, but the stemware is obviously not quite up to scratch. But given that this is, I think, getting on for double the price, I don't know. I've yet to see the marked difference between this and the Culver, which I think is very, very good. That is definitely a wine I would recommend, and I think, you know, by English sparkling standards, it's a very good price point, 34 quid, something like that, which is cheap today for English sparkling. I haven't yet identified what it is that this is delivering. It is slightly different. As I say, it's a bit more pure, more sort of clear in terms of fruit expression, more juicy. It's not obviously significantly better than its stablemate at half the price, but perhaps that revelation will come to me later on a subsequent glass when perhaps the chilling might be a little bit better, and it's, I don't know, had a bit of time to wear, and I've had a bit of time to wear, and I can enjoy the scenery for a bit and all that kind of stuff. So initial impressions, good, but not noticeably drastically better than the Culver, the cheaper version. Thought I should do a follow-up on the wine. I finished my dinner. Jerk chicken, in case you're interested. You can see all that over on the Tweedy Outdoors video. This is lower down now, so hopefully better chilled. I don't think it was poorly chilled previously, so I don't think that's been an issue. Occasionally being startled by some strange bird song over there. I actually went and looked up the WineGB, I believe this is 2025 awards, and as I say, Langham seemed to sweep the board in the high scoring points and trophies. This is a gold trophy for Best Blanc de Noirs for this Pinot Noir 2019 from Langham. But let me read to you the tasting notes and let's see if I can actually agree with any of that. So it was 97 points, presumably that's out of a maximum 100. And as noted, it was given the award for the Best Blanc de Noir. Their tasting notes are that it had a deepish hue. As always, my stemware probably makes that more difficult to judge, but yeah, I would say it's a deepish gold. Peanut initially. Did I get any peanut? I don't know. Perhaps now that idea has been poked into my mind, maybe there is a slight whiff of peanut butter or something like that. Quite aldehydic. Not a description I would use. And complex and umami opulent. So I love the word umami. That's one of those things that seems to get criticism. I think I mentioned that in some beer tasting notes over on Tweedy Pubs at some point, and that seemed to really rub some people up the wrong way. I mean, I come from a half Japanese household, so to me that is a normal everyday word to mean a particular kind of savoury quality in food. The nearest word we have in English is savoury, but I think when the Japanese use umami, they mean a little bit more in terms of sort of depth of flavour than just savoury. And the confusing thing about the English language is that I don't think the word savoury has the same meaning in American English. In British English we use it to mean food that is not sweet, food that is, you know, salty, but it doesn't necessarily have to be salty. So cheese is savoury, but cheesecake is sweet typically. Anyway, I digress. Where were we with these tasting notes? Umami opulent. Maybe that's in there. I think now I'm giving this more attention, I'm noticing on the palate some bitter complexity that is reminiscent of some of Dermot Screw's wines, but that usually comes more from the Chardonnay in a lot of his wines, whereas this is something that's expressing Pinot in a nice kind of complex bitter way, which I really like. And peaches do have a slightly bitter edge to them. Some stone fruit does have a slightly interesting, complex, nuanced bitter component. Palate shows low dosage, and that's actually at odds with what I said, because I don't think this was obviously low dosage. I mean, it's really nice, but it doesn't taste dry and devoid of fruit. I mean, not all extra brut or brut nature wines are devoid of fruit, but they tend to be leaning that way. They rely on more sort of mineral character and other things rather than being fruit expressive typically. This, I think, is very fruit expressive. Palate shows low dosage but not unbalanced. And I'd agree, the balance is good. There is a little bit of sweetness in there somehow, and it's just from the fruit, and there is clearly acidity. Nothing about this is searingly acidic though either. Gastronomic and serious, so they're suggesting this is a good food pairing sort of a wine. I just had this with a very inauthentic probably version of jerk chicken, which wasn't even chicken. It went very well. It was refreshing and a nice break from the slight heat and spice of the jerk rub, or my very poor rendition of a jerk rub. Complex. Well, I did just talk about bitter complexity. With candle wax, wow. Creamy, well integrated mousse. I do really like the mouthfeel. I think we're agreeing there. Long finish, a more mature style. Yeah, it's interesting they do all those tasting notes without a single mention of fruit. Absolutely no talk of fruit character. And to me, I'm pretty sure we're getting stone fruit as noted. I think it's sort of peach, but really nice, intense peach with some of those lovely bitter edges. Perhaps sort of sucking the stone from the peach. Slightly different, almost tannic notes from that. This is good. Again, come back to my overall summary. It is good. It is a very nice wine, but the more basic offering, the Culver, is also a very nice wine. I'm still not quite sure I see the justification for the price differential there. They're both very good. We're not complaining. It's a very good wine, but I may have just about exhausted all possible things I could say. I don't feel like that was a very cohesive review, but there we go. I might shut up now. Cheers.